Hello and welcome. In this tutorial, we're going to understand what is known as exception handling. So we're going to understand the various exceptions in Python and how to handle these exceptions. Alright, so let's get started. Now, when you're writing your Python code, it's possible that you're going to encounter some errors. And these errors are going to be in two main forms, that is either in syntax error or in an exception. Right? And in the previous video, we got to understand what a syntax error is. And in this particular video, we're going to understand what an exception is. Okay, so before we get started, let's actually differentiate what an exception is and what a syntax error is. All right, so let me give you an example for a syntax error and also an exception error. So let's say I have a string total data science, right? Let's say I have this string total data science. Then I want to print all the items in this string. Okay, so I'm going to represent all the items by I. So I'm going to say that for I in this string, right? For I in this string, what I want to do is that I want to print all the I, right? I want to print all the I. So if I run this code, now see that I have an error here, right? There's an error here. Let's see the error over here. Now it's saying that we missed parentheses. Okay, so it's a syntax error. We missed the parentheses, and it's saying that did you mean to write this, which is print, right, with a parenthesis covering the I? Is that what we meant, right? So we're supposed to have put parentheses here, but we forgot to do that, and that is actually giving us an error. So this is a syntax error. Okay, this is an error that we encountered because we did not follow the right syntax or the right structure of writing a Python code. Okay, so we got a syntax error. Let's see an exception over here. Let's say I want to divide certain numbers. So I have A equals 10, then I have B equals 0, then I have C equals A divided by B. All right, then I want to print the C out. Okay, so let's see what happens over here. Now over here we see that we have an error over here. Okay, now the syntax is fine, this syntax is fine. Okay, this syntax is fine, everything is fine. We assign A to a value 10, B to a value 0, and then we did the division over here, right? And then we print in the C. Now this one, the syntax is fine. Okay, the syntax is fine. However, when it was running this program, it encountered an error, right, which is zero division, right, which is a zero division error. Right. And this actually happens at runtime, so you can think of an exception as a runtime error. Okay, it actually happens at the runtime. Okay, so it's giving us an error here that we cannot divide by 0. That is division by 0. Okay, so this in this case the syntax is fine, unlike this one where we mix the brackets, right? So if we were to put a bracket over here, if we were to do this and then run it again, now you see that it's working, right? As soon as we follow the right syntax, it's going to work. But in this case, it's not about the syntax. The syntax is fine, but it's still giving us an error. So in that case, it's an exception. All right, so there are actually several built-in exceptions in Python that you're going to be encountering as you progress in your journey as a Python developer. You're going to encounter these kind of exceptions, right? There are actually a lot of them. There are a lot of these exceptions, right? You don't need to put these ones in your head. You don't need to, memorize these things. You don't need to put them in your head. They are going to come naturally as you progress. Okay, they are going to come naturally as you progress. All right, so we're going to actually see how these exceptions are being encountered and how we can handle this kind of exception. Right, so previously we didn't have, when we were dealing with the errors, the syntax errors and all the other errors, we didn't have the flexibility to, we didn't learn how to handle these kind of errors by writing our own code to handle it. We know how to go around it, how to fix it, and how to debug the error, right? But we don't know how to write our Python code to handle this kind of an error. And that's what we're going to do in this particular tutorial, how we can write our own code to handle this kind of an error. Okay, so these are the most important concepts when it comes to handling exceptions in Python. Okay, that is a set and then raise. All right, then we also have this components, that is try and accept. Okay, and then else and then finally. Okay, so these are the most important concepts that you need to know when it comes to exception handling in Python. Okay, so let's take them and then see how it works. So we're going to start with how to raise an exception in Python. That is the raise. Okay, we're going to start to know how to raise an exception in Python. All right. So in Python, we can raise an exception, right? So if we give a condition and then the condition is not satisfied, we can raise an exception. Okay, we can raise an exception. Let me actually give you an example so that you can really relate to it. Okay, so that you can relate to it or you can really understand it better. All right. So let's say we want to allow the user to enter certain number. So I'm going to use the input function here. Then I'm going to tell the user to enter a number. Okay, enter a number. Now I'm going to convert this one to an integer. Whatever the user enters, I'm going to convert it to an integer. Okay, now the condition that I'm going to check over here is that if the number that the user has entered, right, if the number that the user has entered is less than 10, right, if the number that the user has entered is less than 10, then I want to raise an exception, right? I want to raise an exception, and the exception that I want to raise is this. I can give a comment over here, and then I say that sorry, we only accept numbers greater than 10, right? Then I can do maybe you entered, right? You entered so I can actually do this one to get to accept what number that the user entered, right? Okay, I can do this. So let me run this code so that you get to know what is happening over here. Oh, so we actually get an error. So it's a name error input. So we did not spell the input right. So I go back here, then I put T over there. So this is what you're going to be doing. This is what you're going to encounter, right? So as soon as you see an error, this one, I shouldn't bang my head over the wall and said, oh, I got an error. Why is my program not running? Just read it, the error over here, right? I have name error. It's saying that the name input is not defined. So I missed the T. So I went back to put the T there, and that's it. It's done. Okay. So now let me run this one. Let me run my code. Now it's prompting us to enter a number. So let's say we enter a number, say 2, right? And then let's see what happens. Now you see that it's raising an error over here. Now let's go through the error that it's giving us. Okay, now it's saying that it's an exception, right? And see the message that is printing. Sorry, we only accept numbers greater than 10. You entered 2. So this is the message that we gave, right? This is the message that we gave. Now you can see that we can write our own exception and then give an error, right? Give an error. So if you are writing your own program that you want to throw an error, if the user enters the wrong input, right, you can do it in this way, and then you show them the error message. Okay, so this is what has been built in Python, that if you write the code, then it's not the way that you're supposed to write it, then Python gives you an error. This is how the error is being written. Okay, now you see that we raised the error, right? We raised the exception over here, and we can see that the message that we give is going to be given over here, right? So I can change the message as I want, right? I can change the message as I want. So I can do maybe something else. This number is not less than 10, right? So maybe I can do something like this number is, okay, I can do something like this. Okay, so let me run it again, and then you see that the new message is the one that is going to come. So let's say the user enters 7, right? Let's see what happens. Now you see that it's there, right? You see that it's there. No, this number is not less than 10. You entered 7. Okay, so this is how the error is being written, and this is how you get the errors when you input the wrong value. However, let me run it and then give a number which is greater than a number which is greater than 10. So maybe I give 20 over here. Let's see what happens. You see, nothing happens, right? The program stops running and nothing happens. It's because we don't have any else statement to give, right? So if the condition, if the number is greater than 10, we don't have any other thing to give. Later on, I'll show you how to use the else statement also to accept an error and then give a different output. Okay, I'll show you that one later on. So this is how to raise an exception in Python. Okay, let me show you how to do an assertion error as well. Okay, so for assertion error, what we do is that we give a condition, right? We give a condition, and if the condition is true, then we continue running the program. Otherwise, we exit from the program. Okay, that's the assertion error. So instead of you waiting for the program to crash on a midway, what you can do is that you can give a condition, and as the condition gets satisfied, then you can continue running the program. But if the condition is not true, then you stop running the program. Okay, then you stop running the program, and then you throw the assertion error. Okay, you stop running the program and throw the assertion error. Okay, so as you can see over here, you have your assert. You assert that this condition should be satisfied, but if the condition is not satisfied, then you throw an error. You throw the assertion error. Okay, so you have the condition, you assert. If the condition is true, you continue to the next line of the code to continue executing, right? But if the condition is false, you exit from the program and then you raise the assertion error. Okay, so let me give you an example of this. All right, so for instance, earlier on we wanted to divide something by 0, right? So let's say I have a equals 1, right? Then I have my b equals 0. Okay, then if I try to do the division, let's say I want to assert that b should never be equal to 0, right? B should not be equal to 0. Right, this is the assertion that I want to make. This is the condition that I want to make. Okay, now if a user makes a mistake and try to make a division of 0, right, what I want to do is that I want to throw this assertion error, which is going to be so maybe I can do something like this: invalid operation, right? Invalid operation. I'm just writing in the error message here. You can't divide by 0, right? You can't divide by 0. Okay, don't try to be too smart, right? Something like this. Maybe this is the error message that I want to give. Okay, so now if I try to print say a divided by b, that is, I'm trying to do division by 0 here, right? Let's run this one and see what happens. Okay, now you see that now the assertion error is being raised. Okay, now we have the assertion error over here, and it's saying that invalid operation, you can't divide by 0, don't try to be too smart. Okay, so now you see that the message that we gave over here, right, is the message that has been thrown over here. Okay, so this is how you do an assertion error. You give a condition, and if the condition is not satisfied, then you actually give an error. So this is how the zero division error is being written in Python. Okay, so when you try to divide by 0, then it's going to give you 0 division error, and it's going to say that invalid dividing by 0. Okay, so this is how it is being done. All right, now let's see how we can actually handle these kind of errors. Okay, let's see how we can actually handle these kind of exceptions. Okay, so the strategy that we use to handle exceptions is what is referred to as a try and except block. Okay, so we use the try and except to actually try a certain condition, right? And if it's not satisfied, then we accept the error so that we'll be able to continue running the code. All right, we will be able to continue running the code. Okay, so now let me give you an example of this try and then except, right? So if you see over here, we give a certain code, we try to run a certain code, right? And if we get an exception over there, then we go to the except block. Okay, then we execute this code where we raise the exception. All right, so let's actually have a hands-on example over here. So let's say we have m equals 10, right? We have m equals 10. Now if I want to print this m, it's quite simple. I can just put my m here and then run my code, then it's going to print it and give me 10, right? However, let's say I want to print something like let's say I want to print any random variable here, right? W. Now let's see what happens. Now you see that we have an error over here, right? It's saying that name W is not defined, right? Because this time it doesn't know any W. Unlike this one, we define M before we printed the M. Okay, but this one we did not define W before printing it. So it's saying that the name W is not defined. It doesn't know that W. Okay, so it's giving us a name error. Okay, it's giving us a name error. We can actually write our own code in order to avoid this kind of error, right? To avoid this kind of an error, we can write our own code to show our own our own error, right? When we encounter this kind of an exception, right? We can throw our own exception to the user instead of using the built-in exception. Okay, so let me show you how to do it. So what I'm going to do is that instead of just printing W, what I'm going to do is that I'm going to say that, okay, try to print W, right? Try to print W, right? Try to print W. And if anything happens, if you don't find W, or if there's anything wrong with W, what I want you to do is that accept this error, right? Accept this error and then print. So I don't want to get an error, right? I don't want to get this kind of an error being thrown for me. So what I want to do is to accept that error and then print something else, right? So what I want to now print is that I want to print maybe I think you have not defined W, right? Define W. So in this case, I'm going to use double quote, right? So that I can use single quote inside. Okay, I think you have not defined W, so defined W. Okay, so this is what I want to do. Instead of just printing W and then getting this kind of default or inbuilt error, what I want to do is that I want to try this one and then accept the error and then print something else. All right, so let me run this one here. Now you see what is coming. Now we don't have this kind of an error being thrown for me. I have my own error that I've written. I think you have not defined W. Okay, now see that I've been able to write my own error to bypass this kind of an error. So in this case, the program runs fine. The program runs fine, right? So let's give another example. Let's get another example here. So let's say we want the user to enter their own number here. So I can do impute. Then I will allow them to enter number, right? I will allow them to enter number over here. Then maybe I want them to enter two numbers. Okay, so I want another number. So let's name this one as number 1, name this one as number 2. Then what I want to do is that I want to allow them to input something. So enter maybe second number. Okay, enter second number. All right, so this one is going to be first number. All right, then let's convert everything that you're going to enter into an int, right? Let's convert everything to int. Okay, let's convert everything to an integer. Now what I'm going to do is that I want to try some things over here. So I want to try to divide the first number. Let me do it that way. Let me try to divide the first number by the second number, right? So number 1 by number 2. Okay, that's what I want to do. So let me store this one in a variable called answer. Okay, then what I want to do is that I want to print out. So if this one works fine, if I'm able to divide the two numbers that the user is going to enter, then what I want to do is that I want to do maybe that's great, right? That's great. We are able to perform division, right? We are able to perform division. Then I'll give them the answer. Okay, so the answer is actually going to be, maybe answer is, then let me use double quotes. Let me get rid of this single quote and use double quote over there. Okay, so the answer is going to be the answer that we have. Okay, it's going to be that answer. Now this is what I want to do. I want to accept two numbers from the user, right? I want to accept two numbers from the user. Then I try to divide these two numbers. Okay, and if everything works fine, I want to print this one. That's great. We are able to perform division, and then we give the answer to the user. Okay, Now, if that one doesn't work, I want to raise an exception, right? So I want to do except, right? I want to raise an exception. Then what I want to do is that I want to print, this is the exception that I want to raise. Instead of giving an error message, I want to bypass the error and then print something else, right? Then I want to maybe do sorry, we are unable to perform division, right? We are unable to perform division. Please try different numbers. Okay, so if for instance the user tried to divide a certain number by 0, then I'm going to output the second statement, which is the exception. Okay, I don't want the default Python error, right? Because if I don't handle it, it's going to give me an error. So I want to bypass the error and then still run the program. Okay, so let's run this one and then see what happens. Okay, so now it's prompting us to enter the first number. So let's say the first number is 50, right? Then it will prompt us to enter the second number. So let's say the second number is 5, all right? Now if we do that, now we see that that's great. We are able to perform division and the answer is 25. Okay, let's run it again and then see if the user tried to, maybe the first number is, let's say the first number is 100. And then the second number is 0. So the user is now trying to divide 100 by 0. In this case, if in the normal scenario, Python will give us that kind of a 0, right? It's going to raise a 0 exception. But we have handled that 0 exception, so we don't want that kind of an error. So if we press enter over here, now you see that we are able to print the second statement, which is sorry, we are unable to perform division. Please try different numbers. Okay, now we're able to bypass the error, right? Normally at first we would have gotten an error, right? Like the first one that we did, we tried dividing by 0 and then we got an error, right? Let me even copy this code and go and use this exception to handle it. Okay, instead of getting this error, 0 division error, let's go and handle that one as well. Okay, so I'm going to go here and then paste it over there. Right, I'm going to paste it over here. Now what I'm going to do is that I'm going to just print this one straight away. I'm going to say print, let me put C over here. So I'm going to try this one. Okay, I'm going to try this one. Now if this one doesn't work, and normally this one will not work, it's going to give us an error. But if it doesn't work, I don't want that error. So what I want to do is that I want to raise an exception, right? I want to raise an exception over here. And the exception that I want to raise is this. I want to print something else, right? So I can use the print function over here. And then I'll print something, maybe some error occurred. Right, something like that is fine. Okay. I can even maybe print another statement over here, right? Maybe try another number, something like that. Now see that when we divided by 0, instead of giving us the 0 division error like it was doing earlier on, right? Instead of giving us this kind of an error, now see that we've been able to handle that error, right? We've been able to handle that error, and then it's giving us this message, some error occurred, which is the message that we wrote, and then try another number. Okay, so this is how you handle the error in Python. Okay, this is how you handle the error in Python. Not only the try and then the except, we also have what is called the else clause. Okay, so we have try. Let me show you over here. We have the try and then the except. Okay, then you can also add else. Right, so if you're running the code and you don't get any exception raised, right, then you can continue to run the program. Okay, you can continue to run the program by running the else part. All right, so that's what the this try except else part will do. Okay, so you first run certain code, right, and if you get an exception, then you raise the exception error. But if you don't get any exception, then you run the else part. Okay, so that's what is going to happen. So let me show you an example of the try except and else part. Okay, so let's say let's try some things over here. So let's say we want to try this. We want to try 90 divided by, let's say we want to try 90 divided by 30. Okay, and then we're going to print the answer, right? So the answer over here is going to be the result of C. Okay, that's what is going to happen. Now if this thing is wrong, if this thing is wrong, or if there's syntax, or if there's any runtime error over here, then we want to raise an exception. And the exception that we want to raise is to print this. Maybe we can give something. Why are you trying to perform this kind of division? Maybe something like that. Why are you trying to perform this kind of division, right? However, if we don't encounter anything, if we encounter something, that's when we raise the exception, right? But if we don't encounter any error here, then we can execute the else part. Okay, we can execute the else part. So maybe I can print the else part. I can print maybe executing the else clause, right? Because there was no exception raised, maybe something like that. Okay, so I can do something like this. So let's run this code and see. Now see that we have we're able to divide 90 by 30 correctly, right? So it's saying that executing the else. Okay, so we're supposed to put else here. I think I misspelled it. So executing the else clause. Let me run it again. Okay, now you see that we're able to divide 90 by 30, and then we have our answer there, and it's saying that executing the else clause because there was no exception raised. Okay, however, if for instance we try to divide by 0 over here and then see what happens. Now you see that it's now it's now raising an exception because it was not able to divide this number by 0. So why are you trying to perform this kind of division? Now I see that it's raising the exception part. Okay, so this is how you use the else, right? This is how you use the try, except, and then the else, right? There's another part which is called finally, right? There's another part which is called finally. So let's see that one as well, right? So when we talk about the finally clause is actually executed no matter whether there's an exception in it or there's no exception, right? Whether the code runs into an error or not, the finally part gets executed. Okay, so the importance of this finally part is to release all the resources that we are using, right? So that the resources will be free to be used by other programs as well. Okay, so that's what we use the finally part to do. It's more like closing a file. So you read the file, then you close it so that you can release the resources for other programs to use it. Okay, that's the finally part. So the finally part is going to run no matter what, whether you're going to get an exception or not, right? Your finally clause is going to run. Okay, so let's see an example. I'm just going to copy this one, the example that we used earlier on for the try, except, and else. Okay, and then add the finally part. Okay, so this is what we have over here. I'm going to add the finally part. So it's just simple. You just have to write finally. Okay, that's all. So if you want to execute certain statement regardless of whether there's an error or not, I can do that. Okay, using the finally. So maybe I can do this statement is executed whether there's an exception or not, right? So let me do that. This statement is executed, right, whether there is an exception or not. Okay, so if I run this one, although there's an exception in there, but you see that the last statement, which is finally, is running. This statement is executed whether there's an exception or not, right? So if there's no exception, like we divided by 30, right? Now you see that it's still executing, right? This statement is executed whether there's an exception or not. So if there's an exception, it's going to execute. If there's no exception, it's still going to execute. Okay, so that's the finally part. It actually helps you to execute a certain statement regardless whether there's an exception or not, and it's going to help you to release the resources from your program, from your current program, so that the other programs that is running on your machine can be using those resources. All right, so this is it for you. This is how to handle the various errors or the exceptions in Python. So in the previous tutorial, we got to know the various errors in Python and how to handle them. And then in this tutorial, we also got introduced to how to write our own custom code to handle these kind of errors without seeing the custom errors that Python is going to give us. And we've seen the try, the except, the else, and then the finally. Okay, so let's summarize the concept that we have learned over here, right? So if you use the raise, the raise will going to allow you to throw an exception at any time. Okay, that we saw earlier on. And then if you use the asset is also going to help you assert that certain conditions should be satisfied, and if that condition is not satisfied, then raise an assertion error, right? And then we have the try clause, which is going to help you to try certain condition, and if it is true, it is get executed. If it's not true, then use the except to actually accept the error and then raise a certain exception. Okay, then the else part is going to help you to actually execute a certain block of code if there's no exception encountered or if there's no error raised in the first condition. Okay, and then we have the finally, which is going to execute no matter what, right? Whether there's an error or not, is going to execute and helps you to release the resources from your current program to the other programs that are running on your system. Okay, so that is it, how to handle errors in Python. So as soon as you see the error, don't freak out. Just you can easily debug it, you can easily fix it with these skills that we have learned in the previous tutorial or in this particular tutorial. Okay, you can now put your skills into use by checking the data science and machine learning projects and deployment course, where we actually learn the various machine learning concepts, all the algorithms, and how to build the machine learning models and how to even deploy them in production on standard, on industry level platforms like Amazon Web Service, Google Cloud, Microsoft Azure, using Flask and Streamlit and Heroku, right? And also how to perform industry level data cleaning, right? You can also check the Python data analysis for data science and machine learning course. Okay, so these two courses are going to really help you to have a strong foundation in data analysis and data science. Okay, so see you in the next tutorial. Have a nice day.